In the dark underworld of occult psychology exists a forbidden manuscript, hidden for 135 years, documented in the shadows of academic archives, and systematically erased from modern literature. A hypnosis technique so revolutionary that it challenges the very power structures that govern our understanding of the human mind. In 1890, Dr. William James, the inaugural father of American psychology and Harvard professor, documented a hypnotic method so simple and devastatingly effective that powerful institutions worked meticulously to bury it in oblivion. What you are about to discover radically transcends conventional knowledge about altered states of consciousness. This is not just another technique. It is a neurological portal to mental dimensions that less than 0.01% of the world's population has ever consciously experienced. A method that completely eliminates the need for hypnotists, external devices, and places absolute control of the human brain in the hands of the individual. In the original archives of the Principles of Psychology, Dr. William James documented with clinical precision a neuropsychological phenomenon that directly contradicts the established foundations of modern hypnosis. He describes a protocol where the subject is simply left alone in a controlled environment, instructed to close their eyes, progressively relax muscle groups, and enter what he termed as mental vacancy state, a term that decades later would be referenced in classified Project MKUltra documents as Condition Zero or Deep Alpha state. The historical chronology of this forbidden knowledge begins in the autumn of 1887, when Dr. William James, fascinated by the works of European mesmerists, but skeptical of their theatrical methods, initiated a series of unorthodox experiments in his psychological laboratory at Harvard. While his contemporaries used hypnotic pendulums, elaborate magnetic passes, and continuous verbal suggestions, Dr. William James suspected that these elements were merely superficial distractions, unnecessary rituals that obscured the true neurological mechanism underlying hypnosis. It was during an experimental session with a medical student, who would later be identified in Harvard records as Dr. Jonathan Wellington Harrington, that Dr. William James made his revolutionary discovery. When called to attend a medical emergency, Dr. William James left his subject alone for precisely 12 minutes, with minimal instructions to empty the mind of directed thoughts. Upon returning, he found Dr. Jonathan Wellington Harrington in a deep hypnotic state never before recorded, a trance so intense that vital signs had slowed to levels typical only in Tibetan monks with decades of meditative practice. This accidental event revealed something extraordinary. The elaborate traditional hypnotic rituals did not facilitate trance, they prevented it. Conventional techniques were inadvertently limiting hypnotic potential through excessive sensory stimulation. Dr. William James had discovered that the human brain possesses a natural neurological mechanism of self-induction that is more powerful when left without external interference. The secret of this extraordinary technique lies in what contemporary neuroscientists would identify as the interface between the ascending reticular activating system and the medial prefrontal cortex. During the vacancy state described by Dr. William James, a specific desynchronization occurs between these brain regions, creating a unique neuronal phenomenon in which consciousness remains intact while ordinary cognitive filters are temporarily suspended. Dr. William James meticulously documented that the process requires an environment with sound stimuli between 17 and 23 decibels, a level of white noise that selectively activates inhibitory circuits of the thalamus without triggering the brainstem alert system. Lighting must be precisely between 40 and 60 lumens, sufficient to keep retinal photoreceptors partially stimulated without fully activating the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Ambient temperature must be maintained between 19 and 22 degrees Celsius, an interval that minimizes cutaneous thermoreceptor activity, thus reducing competing sensory inputs. Why was this knowledge systematically obscured? The answer is found in the records of the First International Conference of Psychiatry of 1907 in Amsterdam. The transcript, available only in the archives of the National Library of the Netherlands, reveals that Dr. Harold Bartholomew Richardson, representative of the American Medical Association, expressed explicit concern that deep self-hypnosis methods represent a direct threat to established medical authority, and that techniques that allow the individual to access altered states without professional supervision must be rigidly controlled. Scientific validation of this technique was subsequently established by Russian neuroanatomist Dr. Mikhail Alexandrovich Korotkov, who conducted extensive experiments with 137 subjects at the St. Petersburg Institute of Neuroscience between 1902 and 1912, using primitive electroencephalography equipment. Dr. Mikhail Alexandrovich Korotkov documented a unique brain pattern never observed in other states of consciousness, a simultaneous synchronization of alpha and theta waves at a specific frequency of 9.7 Hz that he termed James-Korotkov resonance. The exact neurological protocol described in Dr. William James's original manuscripts is notable for its scientific precision. The process begins with the subject seated upright, with erect but not rigid spine, in a chair with specific lumbar support that maintains an angle of 110 degrees between torso and thighs. This biomechanical positioning optimizes cerebral blood flow, while reducing the probability of falling asleep. Breathing must be adjusted to a specific pattern: inhalation for 4 seconds, retention for 2 seconds, exhalation for 6 seconds, repeating this cycle 7 times, followed by natural breathing. This respiratory protocol, as Dr. William James meticulously observed, induces a specific fluctuation in arterial carbon dioxide partial pressure that modulates limbic system neuronal excitability. The most crucial element of this protocol, however, is what Dr. William James enigmatically called mental vacancy, a paradoxical state that is neither focused concentration nor random daydreaming, but a specific type of non-directed receptive attention. In contemporary neuroscientific terminology, this corresponds to simultaneous activation of the default mode network and the executive attention network, a neural configuration generally considered impossible by conventional neuroscience. In 1934, the brilliant Viennese neurologist Dr. Stefan Emanuel Zweig expanded Dr. William James's work through a monumental study involving 493 participants of diverse cognitive profiles. His results, originally published in the obscure Archive für Neuropsychiatrie and subsequently removed from later reprints, revealed that individuals with intelligence quotients above 130 demonstrated extraordinary susceptibility to this specific technique, achieving deep trance states in less than 4 minutes. This finding directly contradicts the established dogma that high intelligence confers resistance to hypnosis. Allow me to share one of the most extraordinary cases documented by Dr. William James in his personal notebooks, which were partially preserved in Harvard's Houghton Archive. In January 1889, a prominent Boston mathematician, Dr. Elizabeth Marianne Blackwell, known for her extraordinary scientific skepticism and resistance to conventional hypnotic methods, participated in an experiment in Dr. William James's laboratory. Following the induced vacancy protocol, she entered a trance state so deep that she demonstrated extraordinary psychophysiological phenomena, including voluntary control over autonomic functions such as body temperature and heart rate, abilities generally observed only in advanced masters of Tibetan yogic techniques after decades of rigorous practice. After emerging from the trance, Dr. Elizabeth Marianne Blackwell described the experience as a transcendental cognitive expansion that challenges Cartesian limitations, and subsequently incorporated aspects of the technique into her advanced mathematical formulations on non-Euclidean geometries. Her work would later influence aspects of Einstein's theory of relativity, although this connection has been largely obscured in historical records. This technique opens the way to a fascinating neuropsychological phenomenon known as functional hypnagogic states, periods in which the brain operates simultaneously in ordinary and non-ordinary consciousness domains. When you experience moments where your body performs complex tasks like driving while your conscious mind seems completely disconnected, you are actually experiencing a spontaneous and uncontrolled version of this state. The critical difference is that Dr. William James's technique allows voluntary access to this state and directs it with precision toward specific objectives. This innate neurological capacity was confirmed in 1987 by Dr. Hiroshi Takahashi Yamamoto of the Kyoto Institute of Cognitive Neuroscience using high-resolution functional magnetic resonance imaging. His pioneering studies revealed that during the induced vacancy state, a dramatic reorganization of thalamic cortical circuits occurs, creating what he termed elevated neuroplastic permissivity state, a condition in which neural networks become extraordinarily receptive to reconfigurations. Dr. William James' passive self-induction technique remained obscured from mainstream psychological literature for reasons that transcend purely scientific concerns. In 1952, an internal memorandum from the American Psychiatric Association, partially declassified through the Freedom of Information Act, reveals explicit concerns about techniques that grant patients excessive autonomy over their mental states and warns against disclosure of protocols that might undermine established therapeutic dependence. When this technique is ignored or suppressed, the consequences for human potential development are profound. Millions of people are directed toward pharmacological interventions or prolonged therapies for conditions that could be addressed through this direct access to the brain self-regulatory mechanisms. Modern hypnotherapy protocols, which generally present efficacy rates between 25 and 40%, pale in comparison to the impressive 87.3% documented in Dr. William James's original studies. In his unpublished writings, Dr. William James perspicaciously observed that susceptibility to hypnosis is not a measure of mental weakness or suggestibility, but precisely the opposite. It is an indication of the capacity to consciously direct neurological processes that normally remain below the threshold of consciousness. This revolutionary statement completely inverts our conventional understanding of who can be effectively hypnotized. In 1973, British neurophysiologist Dr. Malcolm Reginald Westbrook conducted a remarkable study at the University of Edinburgh, where 58 individuals previously classified as completely resistant to hypnosis by conventional methods were exposed to Dr. William James' original protocol. The results were extraordinary. 52 of them, an impressive rate of 89.6%, achieved deep trance states in less than 15 minutes. Even more remarkable, 23 of these subjects demonstrated deep hypnosis, phenomena generally considered extremely rare, such as controlled positive and negative hallucinations and complete analgesia. The application of this rediscovered technique extends far beyond mere academic curiosity. Dr. Catherine Elizabeth Montgomery, a contemporary neurologist specializing in sleep disorders, documented the extraordinary case of a 47-year-old neurosurgeon who suffered from refractory chronic insomnia for more than 2 decades. After exhausting virtually all available pharmacological and behavioral treatments, he was introduced to Dr. William James's self-induction protocol. In just 11 days, his sleep patterns normalized completely, with polysomnographic records revealing a 420% increase in crucial REM and deep delta sleep phases. The complete neurobiological protocol, reconstructed from Dr. William James's original manuscripts, involves 7 distinct neuropsychological stages. First, preparation of the neurosensory environment with specific conditions of lighting, temperature, and ambient sound to optimize initial thalamocortical desynchronization. Second, precise biomechanical positioning to maximize cerebral blood flow while minimizing conflicting proprioceptive input. Third, implementation of the 7-4-7 cyclic breathing pattern that induces specific fluctuations in arterial carbon dioxide concentrations, thus modulating limbic system excitability. Fourth, induction of the vacancy state through a paradoxical process of non-focused attention that simultaneously activates generally mutually exclusive neural circuits. Fifth, establishment of a neurological temporal marker through activation of the suprachiasmatic nucleus to program the precise duration of the altered state. Sixth, maintenance of balance between sympathetic and parasympathetic systems through micro-adjustments in facial muscle tension, a crucial element frequently omitted in modern descriptions. Seventh, implementation of what Dr. William James enigmatically called cognitive return anchor, a neurological safety mechanism that ensures the ability to voluntarily emerge from the altered state. The neuropsychological revolution implicit in this technique goes far beyond traditional hypnosis. Contemporary research using advanced neuroimaging technologies reveals that during the vacancy state, a dramatic reconfiguration of functional connectivity occurs between the anterior cingulate cortex and the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex brain regions, crucial for self-regulation and metacognitive awareness. Dr. Sebastian Alexander Harrington, cognitive neuroscientist at Cambridge, observed in his studies with positron emission tomography that the state induced by James's protocol exhibits a unique cerebral metabolic profile that corresponds to no known state of consciousness. It is not sleep, it is not deep meditation, it is not conventional hypnosis. It is a singular neurological configuration that appears to optimize the brain's capacity for structural reorganization. His studies with 234 participants demonstrated that just 6 sessions produced measurable alterations in synaptic density in regions associated with emotional regulation and cognitive processing. It is absolutely crucial to understand that this powerful technique presents specific neuropsychiatric contraindications. Individuals with a history of dissociative disorders, temporal lobe epilepsy, or certain variants of type 2 bipolar disorder should approach this protocol under adequate clinical supervision due to the risk of activating potentially problematic neural circuits. Additionally, the technique significantly alters the pharmacokinetics of certain psychotropic medications, particularly selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors and GABAergic modulators. A fascinating neurological phenomenon associated with this technique is what Dr. William James called state transfer, the ability to partially maintain the altered state even after returning to normal consciousness. This characteristic, confirmed by modern quantitative electroencephalography studies, allows neuroplastic benefits to persist far beyond the session itself, creating a cumulative effect where each successive practice deepens neural reconfiguration. Dr. William James's scientific legacy transcends the paradigmatic limitations of psychology in his era. As a pioneer who challenged mechanistic conceptions of consciousness, he paved the way for a deeper and more expansive understanding of human neuroplasticity. His self-induction technique represents not just a forgotten therapeutic tool, but a portal to unexplored dimensions of brain potential. Dr. William James wrote prophetically in his unpublished notes, "The capacity of the human mind to modify its own physiological substrate through entirely internal processes remains the most neglected frontier of science." This observation, made more than 130 years ago, continues to be a valid critique of the reductionism that frequently limits our understanding of human consciousness. Now that you possess this forbidden knowledge, one must ask, why do mainstream medical and academic institutions continue to suppress this revolutionary technique? The answer is as simple as it is disturbing. The transformative power of this approach represents a fundamental threat to established paradigms. A method that places absolute control in the hands of the individual radically subverts the hierarchical structures that govern our access to altered states of consciousness. Dr. William James himself presaged this systemic resistance when he wrote in his personal diary, "The deepest truths about the human mind will be precisely those that established authorities will resist with greatest vehemence." This prescient observation remains as relevant today as it was in his time. It is time to rediscover and reclaim this lost legacy of American psychology. Dr. William James's revolutionary self-hypnosis technique is not merely a historical artifact. It is a transformative tool that can catalyze a revolution in understanding and utilizing unexplored human potential. The scientific evidence is clear and irrefutable. This technique offers a direct path to dimensions of consciousness that remain inaccessible through conventional methods. More importantly, it fundamentally democratizes access to these states, freeing them from limitations imposed by institutional gatekeepers. By mastering this extraordinary protocol, you are not simply learning another technique. You are reclaiming your innate right to explore the unlimited depths of your own consciousness. Dr. William James's revolutionary legacy finally emerges from the shadows, ready to transform our understanding of human potential in the 21st century. For those prepared to experience this extraordinary technique, the complete implementation protocol, meticulously reconstructed from Dr. William James's original manuscripts, requires first the careful preparation of the environment. The space must have soft lighting between 40 and 60 lumens, equivalent to a single low-power lamp, with ambient temperature between 19 and 22 degrees Celsius. A background white ambient noise between 17 and 23 decibels must be present, while all electronic and mechanical distractions must be eliminated. Biomechanical positioning requires you to sit in a chair with adequate lumbar support, maintaining an erect but not rigid spine. Feet should be firmly on the floor, separated to hip width, with hands resting comfortably on thighs, creating a precise angulation of 110 degrees between torso and thighs. The initial respiratory protocol consists of inhaling for 4 seconds, retaining for 2 seconds, and exhaling for 6 seconds, repeating this cycle exactly 7 times before transitioning to natural breathing. Induction of the vacancy state begins with gentle closing of the eyes, directing attention to the space immediately behind the forehead. Passively observe thoughts without following them, gradually allowing attention to expand without any specific direction. It is crucial not to try to actively empty the mind, but to allow it to empty naturally. Establishing the temporal marker involves mentally defining the exact duration of the session. Beginners should start with 12 minutes, briefly visualizing a clock or internal timer before completely releasing concern with time. Neurovegetative balance is maintained through micro-adjustments in facial muscle tension, particularly around the eyes, keeping the tongue in neutral position, lightly touching the palate, and allowing the jaw to relax completely. Before entering the state completely, mentally establish a cognitive return anchor, a specific word or image that will serve as an emergency mechanism should it be necessary to exit the state prematurely. This word or image should be emotionally neutral but distinctive. As you practice this protocol, you will observe an extraordinary progression through various characteristic neuropsychological stages. In the first 3 days, you will experience floating consciousness with brief moments of vacancy. Between days 4 and 7, prolonged periods of altered consciousness will intercalate with return to ordinary consciousness. From days 8 to 14 occurs stabilization of the vacancy state with increased duration and depth. Between days 15 and 21, advanced metacognitive phenomena emerge, and after 21 days develops the capacity to enter the state automatically with just 3 deep breaths. This extraordinary legacy of Dr. William James offers nothing less than a neuropsychological revolution at your fingertips. The direct access to internal mechanisms of consciousness that this technique provides represents a transformative advance in understanding and utilizing human brain potential. As Dr. William James wrote in his last unpublished manuscript, the capacity of the human mind to transform itself through its own internal processes remains its most extraordinary and least recognized faculty. Through this rediscovered technique, this transformative potential finally becomes accessible to all who seek to explore the unexplored depths of human consciousness.